Alright, so as you noticed here, I kind of changed the crown a little bit, but it's not really that big of a deal. I just thought that the kind of crown-like halo around his head didn't look as good for his hairstyle, so I just made it more like kind of more forward on his forehead. But anyways, let's go ahead and start lining this. Now, of course, I always like to erase, very, very lightly, very gently, because I still want to see the underlying drawing. But just erase enough that you can see but not get distracted with. Because that's the worst thing when you thought you lined something because the lines were so dark, and then you realize that when you finally erase that it's not fully lined. So let's go ahead and do that. So I will use my 005 for my micron, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. So I'm going to start off with the face. So I'm just going to once again just line this really, really carefully. I'm even probably tempted to do something more of like a 01 or 05, but I think this will do for now. So I'm just going to be tracing everything in this line weight. If you want to make this look a little bit more manly, you can even add some like nice textured lines like so. I like adding textured lines for guys because it gives them more like a aggressive effect. So if you look at shonen manga like, One Piece or Naruto even, they have these kind of like really sharp, or these really kind of like gritty looking lines that look really, really nice. So I'm going to actually use a 01 because this illustration is quite big. So I'm going to use a 01, and I think that would be a good thickness. So notice how I'm also pretty bold with my eyes as well. You can even add some nice textures under the eyelid just to kind of give it that aggressive look. So try not to make it look too hairy, still have some consistent line work. But when it comes to guys, you can also let loose a little bit, add some texture. If you find yourself making a mistake, just try and fix it the best you can. So far, so good. Just lining it very carefully here. Whoops. Try not to flip your pen around. If you want, you can also make that mouth a little bit open. Try not to ruin this image. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good for now. So now let's go ahead and trace in the ears. There's the outer lobe, then the inner lobe. So just that is enough. I'm actually going to make this eye blacked out just to kind of show the denseness of it. In fact, the thinner the pupils are, actually, I think that might actually work a bit better. But for now, this is good. So just refining, this is the refining stage. Let's draw some hair. And let's draw in the crown. And make sure it wraps around the head nicely. So if you want to darken the lines, you can go ahead and trace steadily over the same line over and over until the desired thickness. And we have his hair also kind of sticking out a little bit because the crown is fitted on his head, but the hair is still kind of reacting to it. So make sure that that there's tuft around it. So we're gonna add a little bit of the ridge here. Make sure that it kind of pulls over his head. Can even add some other strands on top if I wanted to, but I'm not going to add too much because I don't want it to compete. Let's add a little gemstone in the center. Make sure it's not flat looking. Make sure it's still, going through the perspective. You can add some patterns if you want. I'm going to add some light patterns. And because this is anime, this doesn't have to be super detailed. It can just be simplified. You can even, kind of indicate it just like this. Just kind of add some stippling or some nice squiggles to kind of indicate detail. If you want to go more detailed, you can. Just don't make sure it's not too dense, or else it's going to compete once again. So you don't want to compete from the face. You want to make sure that it emphasizes the face. So this will be good enough for now. Now let's add in his collar for his neck. And then let's add a bit of the sternocleidomastoid. So far, so good. And if you want, you can go back to your reference again if you need any help on, drawing what parts to draw. So this is going to have a little bit of rings around it. Make sure this looks like metal, so you can also, tile on top or layer. Here is the V shape, with where his chest plate or his upper body armor starts. And there's also an under layer as well, so don't forget that. And here we have his fur, which can be simplified. Make sure you vary in your shapes. Draw some big, medium, small shapes so it doesn't look too even. You don't want too even of fur, or else it'll look really weird. You can also even add some texture. So that's what it looks like for now. Looking so far so good. Do the other side as well. You can also add, fur overlapping in front. Just to kind of give some distance. And now let's add his little emblem, which is like a nice little ellipse. If you don't want to do this, that's fine. I like to add a little bits of ellipses, just make sure it's smooth as possible. Don't worry if it's not perfect with your circles. Just do the best you can. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. And notice that, if I'm going to do the other emblem, for example, it's not going to be as round as this. This is going to be a little bit more oval in shape. And then here is the start of the shoulder pad, which is going to be kind of rounded. And make sure that it's also overlapping on top of other armor pieces. So that's what it looks like so far. A bit of a long process, but I'm just showing you what, the raw footage is like, And let's add a little bit of a rim. Oh, yeah, let's add a bit of a rim. I was going to add some strings across, but since I lined this already, it's kind of a little bit too late. So I'm not going to add in those lines. Let's add a ridge, kind of like a little decorative ridge. And let's add in these spirals of where not the spirals, let's add a little bit of where the shoulder blades or the shoulder pads will attach to. So there's these kind of ridge-like shapes. Make sure you're tiling on top of your shapes. So this is where it starts, and this is where it kind of starts repeating. There. So that's one side. Then the other side. Just tie them across. You can also add little bolts to show how it connects. Also, I like to add ridges just show some shape language and some nice little marks. I like to add them around the ends here, kind of just to show turning edge. So far, so good. Here's the other side. You can also add just a little bit of detail down here. You don't have to add too much, but just enough to see that this is like an indication. In fact, this could also be like a nice little piece of cloth or sleeve. Then we have the elbow pad. Just tracing over what we've drawn. And if you want to also add some variation, go ahead and do that. So there's just something about adding these ridges that makes it a little bit more girthy. So, especially with things like armor, you want to add, another edge just to show that it's, girthy. So I'm adding more edges in between. So if you want to see what this looks like up close, I added a little second ridge here just to show that this is thick. We can also add a little bit of detail here. Here's where it all connects, so there's like a little bit of a disc just to show where the joint is. So I'm gonna add a little bit of emblem detail here. Something like that. Let's give his symbol kind of like a rose or something. Maybe just a simple diamond. I think that will work fine. Let's just make it simple. Like a diamond emblem. Like so. I think that looks pretty nice. Fits over with his overall crown as well. Now let's do the other side. Make sure it wraps around. Just do the same thing on the other side. Just with a little bit more upward perspective. So all this is quite self-explanatory, I should say. The reason why I added this here was just kind of show like another connection between the two. So maybe it's kind of like a little disc that overlaps on top. Just adding more details. There. We can add the other side. And that is the other side. Now let's add in his emblem as well. So make sure that everything is symmetrical. Not really symmetrical, but just the same. This has the same details as this one and the like. So once you got that roughly done, let's go ahead and move on. So let's see how much time we are. We're at almost 20 minutes. So I think I will stop here for now and just pause, and we will continue on in the next video. Bye-bye.